On July 28, 1945, the USS Indianapolis sailed from Guam, alone and nearly blind, with no escort, no working sonar, and no warning that a Japanese submarine was hunting in its path. 12 minutes after midnight, disaster struck. Hundreds died instantly. But this tragedy was not just the result of enemy action. It was the outcome of hidden failures within the Navy itself. The real question is, how did a single broken chain of command doom 879 men? USS Indianapolis slipped her moorings in Guam on July 28, 1945, bound for Leyte Gulf. The crew believed they were headed for routine duty, unaware that the ship was already carrying a hidden stack of vulnerabilities. Orders from the port director sent the cruiser out alone, with no destroyer escort to screen for submarines, despite weeks of enemy activity reported across the Philippine Sea. The decision was not a fluke of the moment. It reflected a war-weary Navy, stretched thin and relying on old assumptions. Indianapolis had been battered by a kamikaze off Okinawa 4 months earlier, forcing a rushed overhaul at Mare Island. Maintenance crews flagged her sonar as inoperative and recommended replacement, but the part never arrived. The ship was declared fit for sea anyway, even though she sailed without any way to detect a submerged threat. On the bridge, Captain Charles McVeigh received a routing order with a base course to Leyte and instructions to zigzag at his own discretion, but he never saw the latest intelligence. No one warned him that the Japanese submarine I-58, along with others, had been reported operating in the broad area he would cross. Navy codebreakers had intercepted enough traffic to know that enemy boats were still hunting, but that information stayed at higher command levels. The system's security rules and compartmented practices meant that actionable details rarely reached the men most exposed. Indianapolis was not assigned to a tactical fleet command for this leg. No one on shore would be tracking her progress, and there were no required check-ins between departure and arrival. The ship sailed at 17 knots, trusting in speed and routine, but with no eyes or ears beneath the waterline. For the 1,195 men aboard, the stage was set for disaster, not by a single oversight, but by a chain of decisions and omissions that left them nearly blind and alone in hostile waters. At 14 minutes past midnight on July 30th, 1945, the calm of the Philippine Sea shattered. 6 torpedoes streaked through the black water from the Japanese submarine I-58, commanded by Mochitsura Hashimoto. 2 found their mark. The first slammed into the starboard bow, tearing open the forward compartments and flooding them instantly. Men sleeping below never had a chance. Seconds later, the second torpedo struck amidships, just forward of the number 2 magazine. The resulting explosion split the Indianapolis nearly to her keel. Steel buckled, decks heaved, and a wall of fire and smoke ripped through the heart of the cruiser. Within moments, every light on board flickered out. The blast killed all electrical power, silencing radios and alarms. No distress call left the ship. In the sudden darkness, confusion reigned. Bulkheads groaned as water surged in. Flames raced along ruptured fuel lines. Crewmen stumbled through oil and smoke, some already burned or blinded, searching for life jackets or a way topside. Many were trapped below by jammed hatches, cut off by fire or rising water. Above deck, the ship listed sharply to starboard. The deck angle grew steeper by the minute. Orders to abandon ship spread by word of mouth, shouted through the chaos by officers and petty officers, some already wounded themselves. The Indianapolis was dying fast. From the first impact, only about 12 minutes passed before she was gone. Men scrambled for rafts or leapt into the sea, some barely awake, others already injured. Life jackets were scarce, rafts even scarcer. The ship's stern rose high in the air, then slid beneath the surface at roughly 12:27 a.m. Roughly 300 men died in those first moments, killed by the explosions, drowned in flooding compartments, or pulled under by the sinking hull. About 880 made it into the water, scattered across the dark, oil-slicked sea. Survivor Harold Eck recounted that one moment he was standing on the deck, and the next he was in the ocean watching the ship go down. There was no time to think, just to get away from the suction and hope you could find something to hold on to. The Indianapolis vanished beneath 12,000 feet of water in less than a quarter hour. No one on shore knew anything had happened. No rescue was coming. The men in the water were alone, their ordeal only beginning. Night gave way to a vast, empty sea. About 880 men drifted in groups or alone, oil-soaked, many wounded, clinging to life jackets or bits of wreckage, all fighting for survival. The water, deceptively warm at 85 degrees Fahrenheit, offered no comfort. Hours blurred into days. The sun scorched exposed skin, turning it raw. Thirst clawed at their minds. Some men, unable to resist, gulped seawater and soon slipped into delirium, hallucinating rescue ships or distant shores, sometimes tearing off their life vests and vanishing beneath the surface. Sharks appeared with the dawn, circling and striking at the edges. Survivors remember the water boiling with fins and the sudden screams that followed. Those who managed to stay together formed tight circles, led by junior officers or seasoned chiefs who tried to keep panic at bay. They rationed what little water or rations could be found on scattered rafts, led prayers at night, and tried to keep hope alive. One survivor recalled that if you drifted from the group, you were gone. Another said they sang hymns to keep fear away, but the sharks kept coming. For 4 days, no rescue arrived. The only certainty was that the longer they waited, the fewer would survive. No one ashore tracked the Indianapolis as she vanished. Navy policy at the time treated late arrivals as routine, not as emergencies. The ship's movement report, known as MOVREPA, filed at Guam, listed her route, speed, and estimated time of arrival at Leyte. By Pacific Fleet Directive 10 CL-45, that should have triggered plotting and follow-up if she failed to arrive. But at Leyte, the port director's staff never flagged her as overdue. At Philippine Sea Frontier Headquarters, plotting boards went uncorrected, and key dispatches like 260152 were left off the charts. No officer initiated a search or even sent a query when the ship's estimated time of arrival came and went. The Indianapolis was not assigned to a tactical fleet command, so no one felt direct responsibility to monitor her progress. Meanwhile, intelligence about Japanese submarine activity, including the presence of EA-58, remained compartmentalized at higher levels. The men in the water were erased by a system that assumed silence meant safety. For 4 days, the Navy's own procedures ensured that no alarm would be raised and no rescue would come. On the morning of August 2, 1945, Lieutenant Wilbur Chuck Gwynn flew his PV-1 Ventura on routine anti-submarine patrol over the Philippine Sea. A glint of oil on the water below caught his eye, too large to ignore. Circling lower, he spotted clusters of men and scattered debris adrift in the open ocean, the first sighting of survivors. Gwynn radioed for help, holding position as long as fuel allowed. Lieutenant Adrian Marks received orders to investigate and, seeing the desperate survivors, landed his PBY Catalina on heavy swells, risking his crew and his aircraft against standing orders. Marks and his men hauled survivors aboard, filling every available space and lashing more to the wings. That night, Commander Graham Claytor Jr., aboard USS Cecil J. Doyle, ordered searchlights pointed skyward, a beacon in the darkness that drew rescuers and comforted men still afloat. Pure chance, split-second decisions, and courage saved the lives that the system had left behind. Only 316 men survived the ordeal. The rest, 563 sailors, died in the water from exposure, dehydration, injuries, or shark attacks. The Navy put Captain Charles McVeigh on trial in December 1945, charging him with hazarding his ship by not zigzagging. Mochitsura Hashimoto, the Japanese submarine commander who sank Indianapolis, testified that zigzagging would have made no difference. No flag officer was ever disciplined. McVeigh's conviction ended his career, and he died by suicide in 1968. Decades later, survivor testimony and the efforts of Hunter Scott led Congress to exonerate McVeigh in 2000. The Navy followed suit in 2001, but the stain of blame lingered for years. Institutional failures still cost lives when warnings go unheard and accountability is sidestepped. Today, military inquiries remain shielded by secrecy and bureaucracy. The lesson of these 879 lost men is clear. Systems that protect themselves endanger everyone else. What price do we pay when the lesson goes ignored?